I hope you can hear me over this little helicopter here. She wants some attention. Anyway, day 6, we are talking about the Tower of Babel. Okay, so after the flood, humanity, civilization began to boom again, and the pride of man once again struck. So man got together and they said, here's this good place for us to all congregate together. We've got building materials. Why don't we build a tower that is so tall it'll reach heaven itself? Now, was the goal of building a lofty tower sinful? No, not necessarily. I don't think so. Of course, I'm not the judge. What was sinful, though, was the obvious pride in the heart of man. And so God said, I'm going to go down and I'm going to see, what they're doing. And so he goes down and sees men and sees, their ambition and their ability to work together and all of that stuff. And he says, this is not good. Now, the reason it wasn't good was because if they had constructed that tower, they would have said, we don't need God for anything. It was just a display of pride is what it was. And so God confounded the language. Up until that point, there was only one language, and then God confounded the language. Now, it's an interesting thing to note that the scripture says in 1 Corinthians 14 that God is not the author of confusion. And it would seem contradictory, right? And I'm sure some people will criticize it as being such, that God would confuse the languages when God is supposedly not the author of confusion. Well, remember that even though God confusing the language was the punishment, the cause of that was sin. If man had not had these prideful, we don't need God notions, then God would not have had to confound their plans. Which is an interesting thing to note, that many times God has to humble us and allow our plans to come to nothing. I think of a particular issue in my life where I knew what God wanted me to do, but then I was determined to set about doing it my own way. And so all of my plans on something that I knew was the right thing to do, all of my plans came to nothing, and he had to teach me that I needed to depend on him. So sin causes confusion. I think that's the lesson title for the actual devotion as it's printed. But sin causes confusion, and that it does. But it also makes it to where we have to be humbled quite a bit more than we would like. So anyway, just a little thought. I'm going to go do Bible study with the family, so I'm only going to do this in one take this time.